Becoming. My name is Ingo Raut, and I'm here with Sara Powell. In this Monday series, we interview people who made life-changing career changes. And in this time that we live in, like a lot of our well-being, our kind of interests are aligned with the work that we are doing. And sometimes it's very scary to actually admit that the work we're doing is not the work we want to do and to embark on a new venture. Now, this is exactly what Sara did. And it took her a while to get to this point. But before we dive into her journey, I want to say hi, Sara.
Hi, Ingo. How are you?
Good to have you. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Sara, can you tell us a little bit about like what you just did, what you just launched?
Sure. Well, I just made my biggest and scariest dream a reality. This is something that's been about 10 years in the making. But last week, I finally launched my new business. And basically, what the business is, it's Impactory is the name, and we align purpose and profit to empower women-led social enterprises to sustainably tackle poverty in developing economies. And I've always been really passionate about using business as a tool to alleviate poverty. And so I finally figured out a way that I could do this and make a business out of it. So the way that we actually fulfill that mission is we work with basically the brightest business minds in banking and consulting. And they actually get to go to Nepal for 8 weeks and do a strategy project with a women-led social enterprise that's focused on different challenges of poverty. So it could be clean water or education, healthcare, unemployment, things like that. And they also do a week of training to actually learn how to translate those business skills that they've used in banking and consulting to serve vulnerable communities and low-income markets, because there are some differences in there. And basically people who just want to use their business skills, but also want to feel inspired by the work they're doing and really make a difference. So I'm really, really excited about it. And yeah, I just can't wait to go to Nepal this fall and really make it happen and just start helping people. It's something I've been passionate about for a long time.
Amazing. So you said you have been passionate about this for a long time, and obviously when you speak we can see that, right? You're really into this, you're looking forward to the next opportunity, and you really believe in what you're doing. But you said it took you 14 years to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us back 14 years? Where were you 14 years ago, and why did it take you so long to get there?
Well, yeah, I think it took first, even when I realized this is something I wanted to do, it still took a lot of time to get to where I needed to be internally, like emotionally, mentally, and just spiritually, to have the confidence to go out and do something like this and really believe in myself. But yeah, so back when I was in college, I was president of the Society of Women Engineers, and I loved being in that role because I was able to empower women to get good jobs and, encourage women and young girls to be in engineering. And it was something that just really fulfilled me, and I just felt so filled with energy and happiness after doing those types of things. And so then I started doing consulting, and I was working originally in doing like defense contract work for the federal government. And that was intellectually stimulating, like it was challenging. It wasn't giving me that like inspiration. I didn't feel inspired by that work. And it definitely wasn't what I really had in mind when I was graduating. And so I learned about Accenture. I used to be a consultant for Accenture. I learned about their nonprofit practice, and I was like, oh, wait, I can do this work, but for nonprofits, this is amazing. And, still make my consultant salary. Like, this is literally a dream come true. So I worked my way into that group, and I loved doing the work. But I don't know, there was still something kind of missing there. And I read this book, Half the Sky. Actually, I saw the TED Talk first, and then I was like, okay, I need to read this book. And it basically talked about these women in developing economies who are just overcoming these just incredibly difficult life, like their environment and all of these different circumstances that they had, and really turning their lives around through business. And I was like, okay, I need to work with these women. So I took a sabbatical from my consulting job and went to India to live and work there, working for a social enterprise that was helping to curb human trafficking. And that was incredible. Like, that experience truly changed my life, because by helping these women. Oh yeah.
It's just like, I love like how beautiful the narrative unfolds, right? And one thing led to another. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but here I wonder, like, I mean, it's a pretty big step to go from, at least from the outside, to go from
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, I read this book, and then like I went into volunteering. I mean, can you walk us a little bit into like what specifically made this connection for you? Where did it click? Where were you like, oh my God, like this really resonates, and I got to do something there? You still remember that moment? Was there a specific?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, first, just when I was reading that book, like the intro, like brought tears to my eyes. I was so moved by just the introduction to the book. And once I got to India, because I had an idea of what it was going to be like, but once I was there, it was incredibly challenging. I mean, it was the most rewarding but most challenging thing I had done up to that point in my life, because yes, I was doing this really wonderful, meaningful work, but I was also living a life very different from the one I was used to. I was, having, like, the drinking water wasn't clean, and I was constantly sick, like for months on end. We didn't have electricity for several hours of the day, every single day. There were just, yeah, so many different things, like threat of violence nearby, malaria, like all kinds of different things that made it incredibly stressful. I was pretty much covered in eczema the whole time. I was so stressed. But what it helped me do is see firsthand, like, these daily challenges that like millions of people in the world live with. And it's really, for me, that experience has stuck with me. And also I remember we were driving through the mountains, and there was this mom and a little girl. And you know how you'll see, like maybe a dad is like mowing the lawn, and then the little kid is like mowing, has their fake little lawnmower. And I remember seeing the mom was working. There was these huge rocks, these like river rocks that they were turning into little pebbles to make the road. And she was hammering these rocks with a chisel, like doing this by hand. And there were the smaller piles. And this little girl was like hammering her little fake pile of rocks. And I was like, just seeing this little girl, like, that's going to be her future, most likely, is going to be doing the same thing her mother is doing. And just realizing like the missed opportunity, and only because she was born into those circumstances, and that image just really stuck with me, and made me feel so inspired to help people in that situation. And yeah, so that really, when I realized I can actually make a difference and work with, like, we went to this one village, and that we were supporting, and they were, showing us around everywhere. And I remember, so there was just like a line of houses, and basically they were all mud huts. And once you got to a certain point, there was no more electricity in the village. Like, this person had electricity and the next ones didn't. And I was like, wait, what happened? And they're like, well, we didn't have enough money to like continue the electricity going down. And I don't know, just, things like that, like, really stuck with me. Just things that you really take for granted, and that I can use my business skills to help, help them have better economic opportunities so that they can have something as basic as electricity. And that, in turn helps kids can do their homework after school, and, things like that are just I don't know, whatever you want to do when the sun goes down, to have light. So yeah, that experience really, really had an impact on me. Like for me, it's before India and after India.
Yeah.
But I basically, from there, I still didn't know, like, how can I do this full time? Like um, I don't know, it just seemed like something I could only do on the side. And that's what I did. Um, and so I was kind of doing that, and I was
So why,
continuing. Oh
stopping
yeah.
you there, why did you at the time think it's only something I can do at the side? Because you had this profound experience, right? There was a lot of things that were negative about this trip, and a lot of
Yeah.
people would have said like, "Never again, I'm out of here." Like, but
Mhm.
like somehow it struck a chord with you, and you felt called to actually do something about this, and
Mhm.
you saw how you could use your skills to support people down there.
Mhm.
But nevertheless, you thought like, okay, this is nothing that I can do like full time. Like, what was happening?
It was, I didn't see a way at the time where I could, like, it seemed like my options were, okay, leave living in the United States and go live in a developing country and have this very difficult life. Like I wanted to help, but like you said, I mean, the experience in India was very stressful. And to be clear, this is like Northeast India. It was like a very rural area. Like there are plenty of places in India that are very developed. Where I was, it was like very rural, more of like a tribal area. And I just like didn't want that type of life for myself. I didn't want to sacrifice that much. Like I still wanted to be able to maintain a certain quality of life, but be able to help people. And so it seemed like it was something very extreme where, yeah, I could tolerate that for 3 months, but I didn't want that to be, years of my life. And it had like a lot of health implications for me. And so it was that, or maybe work for a nonprofit, but I wasn't as interested in working for a nonprofit. I really loved my consulting work. So it was like, I love doing this and I love the strategic thinking that I get with the consulting work, but I don't know, there just didn't seem like a medium that I could find. But
Right.
until I started my business. So
So
that
like
took time.
a couple of things that happened. But what I want to point out here, it seems like at the time you had a couple of puzzle pieces. You knew
Mhm.
something that was worth your while, that you found purpose in, right?
Mhm.
You knew what you were good at and passionate about doing, which was
Yeah.
business consulting. But it seemed like the overall picture of what this could be, based on what you knew at the time, wasn't there. It was like either or, and either or like opportunity didn't seem like something you wanted to pursue because it represented a trade-off that you didn't want to make at the time.
Mhm.
So what happened next? Like, how did you find your way to like this point where we are now, where you started your own business?
Well, I kind of knew there was something. I had all of these great things in my life. Like I had this amazing consulting job. I had a great salary. My apartment was wonderful. I had on the surface like a really wonderful life. And I am very grateful for all of those things. But like there was something like pulling at me. Like I knew that was not it for me. And so I was really looking for a change. And so I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go to business school. And my whole reason that I wanted to go to business school was when I was in India, one of the gaps that I saw in my knowledge was kind of around like financials, accounting, some of the operations of the business. And I had, because my background's in engineering, so like I had the foundations of strategic thinking and problem solving, and obviously working as a consultant for different businesses, I understood enough about business. But to really serve women entrepreneurs in developing economies, I felt like I needed to round out my skill set a little more. So I was like, okay, looking for different business schools. And then I just kind of cleared the slate. I quit my job in Washington, D.C. at Accenture. I got rid of my apartment.
Can I stop you right there? Because
Yeah,
I have done something similar in the past, and it always
yeah.
sounds easy when you talk about it, but like when did you make that decision? And was it like, how did you feel about that decision, like before and after you did it? Because I know it's a big decision. It's not
Yeah,
an easy.
I just kind of followed. It wasn't like a one moment, like a light bulb aha moment. It was more like I had this kind of nagging feeling for a couple of years that was just, I was tired of feeling that. Like I knew there was more to life, and like I didn't know what that was exactly, but I knew I needed to make a radical change, that like what I'm doing is not working. So I need to try something different. And so it was kind of just after feeling like that for some time, I was like, okay. And usually around my birthday, which is the beginning of the year in February, I usually make kind of radical decisions like that. I'm like, okay, enough, and I will change. So I think right around that time, it was my 30th birthday, and I had set goals for myself for my 30th birthday. That's what it was. And I was like, I want to live in a I want to live abroad. I want to practice my Spanish more, and I want to get my MBA. And when I found out about IE business school, I was like, oh, I can do all of those things. That was like my 5-year plan. So I was like, oh, okay, perfect. So I found out about that right around my birthday, applied. I think I got in around like April of that year, something like that. And then August 1st was on a plane to Spain. So yeah, that was kind of it just sort of, I don't know, things just happen in my head where it's like, we're doing this. And then I'm very decisive. Like once I make up my mind about something, like it's done. So yeah, I basically just was like open and ready for the ride, whatever the future was going to be. But I knew I needed to make some kind of change if I wanted to see change. Like, nothing's going to change if you don't change anything. So yeah, I've sold all my stuff and just like moved to another continent, didn't know anybody. And then business school, I'm a big planner. So like I had a plan of, okay, I want to do this, and then I'm going to move to New York after, and I'm going to go into investment banking to help close the gender gap that you see in finance, not only like internally within the companies, but also the women who are having access to funding. But then I was like, no, that's not for me. And I was totally lost, like didn't know what I wanted to do. And then that was basically when I left, like when I decided, okay, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to move to Spain, like that was kind of the beginning of the end of that chapter of my life. And it took me, that was 2017. We're in 2020. So it took me that long to basically have this just like unraveling of myself. Like I was stripped down to just nothing, because I ended up having like a lot of challenges after business school. Well, I was like, okay, I want to help these businesses in developing economies. So I did that. I actually co-founded a clean water social enterprise in Ethiopia. And that was very stressful also, but so rewarding. And that really gave me the clarity again to be like, okay, this is exactly what you want to be doing. You are very good at this. And when I saw that business was successful, and it still is to this day, and it's still running, and like, I mean, to start any business, your odds of success are extremely low, but to be selling a commodity like water to people who live on like less than $3 a day, your odds are like very close to zero. And so the fact that has been successful and we've been able to help so many people has kind of been for me like my guiding light, of just remembering. And it kind of takes me back to India. I mean, it's the same thing, like seeing how I really can help people with these gifts that I have. And it's like I feel this sense of responsibility. Like I have been so fortunate to have these gifts and, have this education and all of this. And I want to be able to give back to people who really wouldn't have access to that otherwise. And so I did that, but then my life really, honestly, it was like the darkest, most difficult time of my life after that. Like I was in a relationship that was like very toxic and extremely stressful. Like my health completely deteriorated. Like I was like having a lot of anxiety, depression, extreme weight loss that I couldn't control. It was just so many things were just off the rails basically. And I wasn't working and I had this like student debt loan payment of $1,000 a month like looming over my head. And so that's like adding more stress to everything. And I'm just like, what am I going to do next? And basically I ended up leaving that relationship that I was in, and that was kind of me like stepping into this like new part of myself and really loving myself, like making a decision for me. And I think that is just like a huge part of what helped me get to where I am today, is taking that first step and just kind of like choosing myself. And I really got into meditation. I think it's so important. Anyone who wants, they're kind of like, what's next? Like you have to know yourself first. And so for me, I realized I was doing a meditation. It was a self-love meditation, and it was a guided meditation, and they basically told you to tell yourself that you love yourself. And I had this like slight hesitation, like a millisecond of hesitation, and I was like, what was that? Like, what is going on here? Like, of course I love myself. And it was like, girl, no, you don't. Like, you have been people pleasing your whole life. Like, you are so anxious. Like, that was my normal. Like, I didn't realize at the time that was how I had been operating for so long. And basically my body was saying no more. Like, I can't do this anymore, and was just kind of falling apart. And so I moved back to the US. I didn't move back. I went back for just like a couple of months to kind of like get myself together. But then the pandemic hit. And so it was like, okay, I don't think I need to be going back to Spain, which was like the epicenter of COVID at the time, and be living alone when I'm feeling like anxious and depressed. Not a good idea. So I stayed with my family, and honestly, it was a blessing in disguise. Like, definitely not where I thought I would be, like 34 years old, back with my parents in my childhood bedroom. Definitely not on the life plan, but I'm so grateful for it. I was able to get my health back on track and really just get in touch with myself and what do I want. And having all of those like superficial things stripped away was the most powerful experience for me, because I was just left with me. And I was, for the first time, like being really vulnerable, because I was always kind of like had everything together and the perfect life kind of thing. And even though like I didn't really think that, but a lot of people had said comments to me like that, like, well, everyone can have a perfect, be perfect like you, or everyone can have a perfect life like you. And it's like, you don't know my life. Like, just because you know 10% of me doesn't mean you know anything that I've gone through in my life. But anyway, from there, it was such a wonderful healing experience, because I was vulnerable and I let in so much love into my life. And I was so happy for the first time in my life, when I had literally nothing. I have like over 100,000 in student debt. I have no job. I have no apartment. My health is, not good. Like, all these things. And I was like, I feel free finally. Like, I just gave myself permission to just like be myself, and I really started loving myself. And from there, I really built the confidence to go after whatever I wanted, because I didn't care what other people thought, and I wasn't comparing myself to other people. I was just like, this is what I want. This is my journey. And, the other people, it might look like on the surface, like, oh, they have it all or something, but you never know what's really going on, behind the curtain, or the traumas they've gone through, or what it took to get them there, So for me, that was just like what helped me. It was like this total rock bottom. And yeah, then there
Can
was
I
like,
just pause you there?
yeah,
So you came home, you stayed longer than expected because of COVID and everything else. You recognized your own situation. You started meditation.
yeah,
Was there a particular moment? Because it's like you hit rock bottom, and the next thing we know is like, oh, you're there. Like, okay, like I was a people pleaser, paid way too much attention to those people.
yeah.
160,000 in debt doesn't really matter. So, like, how did that happen? Do do you have
Yeah,
any
so,
explanation for that, or?
I mean, I basically started just telling myself every day, even though I didn't believe it at first, but that I was worthy of like financial wealth. I was worthy of unconditional love. I was worthy of all of these things that I didn't think that I was, like, subconsciously, I didn't think I was worthy of. And then I started finally believing them. And I basically, to get back on track, my first thing was I want to get back to Madrid. And so I took a job that I was like, I just want to be remote, US company, because I needed a US salary, because that loan, Spanish salary, is not going to pay that. And I wanted to be living there. So I was like, okay, I think this is, and remote work at the time was like a novel thing. That wasn't like now, where it's like everyone's working remotely. But yeah, so I was like, okay, first step, let me just do this. And I took a job that was definitely like beneath what I was qualified for. Like, I was definitely overqualified for it, but I was like, it's okay. Felt like it was a really good match. I was just, again, like the attitude I had before of like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but this feels right. And I was just open to whatever was on the other side of that door. And there, I really built up a lot of confidence, like, during that job, because it was my first job outside of Accenture, which is where like I was kind of like born and raised in my career, was through there. And I really saw there how much value I could really add, because I had been working with people who were really similar to me. So it's like, until you have that perspective, you don't really know, like, oh, this is not like, everyone doesn't have this outside of this company, and things like that I just didn't realize. So working in that company, I really saw the value that I could bring, and that really built my confidence. So I got promoted really quickly to be director of strategy and program management. And then I became the chief operating officer of the company. And through all of that, I learned how to really run a business. Like, it was such a great gift, because I learned really like I got my MBA, but it's very different when you're like doing it practically, and having to make these difficult decisions. And I was like, I'm very good at this, and I really can make a difference. And I always had this kind of nagging feeling like, Sarah, you need to start your own thing. Just start your own thing. Like this little whisper, And finally I got to a point where I was able to save enough and get my finances under control, pay down a lot of that debt, and feel confident enough to leave basically another birthday. So now it's my 35th birthday. And I was like, okay, girlfriend, like, what are we doing next? And I was just having this kind of like moment of, oh my gosh, like the average age of a human is 72.4 years, I think, or 73.4, something like that. And I was like, okay, that's very close to like 35 is very close to the midpoint. Hopefully I live longer than that. But I was just like, oh my gosh, if this is the midpoint of my life, like what if I die tomorrow? Like, is happy with everything I've done. And yes, but the one regret I would have if I like died tomorrow would be not starting this business. And when I had that moment, because I was feeling that, because I always, like I said, kind of get like that around my birthday. But a friend of mine, her cousin had died just unexpectedly. He was very young. And I was just like, wow, like life is so precious. Life is really short. Like it's long, but it's very short. And so I just said, you know what? Like if not now, when? Like I have the money, I have the time, I can do it. The only thing standing in my way is me. And so I said, you know what? I just want to lean into social entrepreneurship. This is something that I've always been, I've been passionate about for so long, and helping women entrepreneurs and, working in developing economies. And so again, I didn't know what that was going to look like next. I just said, I'm just going to start reaching out to like my network and say, hey, I am quitting my job and I'm giving myself a 1-year sabbatical sponsored by myself. And I'm just going to lean into social entrepreneurship. And so I started telling people who are kind of in the social impact space, and they were, I said, I want to teach or coach, or I was like, I don't know, anything that comes up, like I'm open. So then that was really fun, just connecting with people from my network, especially because I had been gone, like, COVID and everything. It was just nice to reconnect with a lot of people. And from there, so many opportunities started happening. Like at this point, I hadn't had the idea for the business, but I had been doing some guest lecturing. I had been coaching some executive MBA teams, like all around social entrepreneurship. And I don't know, I was just kind of trusting the process of like, I'm loving this. Even like, no matter what happens, this has been really fulfilling for me. And I've been reading a lot of books, kind of just helping you kind of figure out like what your gifts are and like the channel that those can come through and things like that. And I don't know, like one night I was just falling asleep and I was like, wait, I could do this. Like, why don't I have people who are like me, who come from consulting banking background, who want to do inspiring work in the world and really make a difference? And why don't I give them this opportunity? Because ever since I did India, the number one question that people ask me after I do like a panel or some kind of talk, they're like, oh my gosh, like I've done that. How can I do a project like this? Or if I talk about the Clean Water Social Enterprise, they're like, how can I do something like this? And that was one of the questions in one of the books I was reading. It was saying, what are people already coming to you for? And so I started thinking about it. And this girl messaged me on LinkedIn and said, was asking these questions. I have a background in consulting. I would love to do work like this. Do you have any recommendations? And so I wrote her this message. And at the end of it, I was like, a lot of people ask me this. And I was like, a lot of people ask me this. And so it was like this thing, like light bulb moment of, oh, this is my thing. Like, this is it. And so yeah, then once I had that clarity, it was just like full steam ahead. I was like, okay, we need to build a website. I need to get partners in Nepal. And I had just gone back like a couple months before I had gone to Nepal. And that, I love that country. And that was also kind of like the final chapter for me of like healing from all of the things before, because when I went there, this has been a dream of mine for like basically since I was in India. Actually, I went to Nepal. I was whitewater rafting, and these two people on the raft, they met climbing Mount Everest base camp, and I was like, wait, what? You can trek Mount Everest base camp? I didn't even know this. So I was like, I want to do this. I'm going to do this one day. And then 8 years later, I was like, it's time. I'm going to Nepal. And my friends were like, wait, what? Like, what are you doing? I just like decide one day and just get on a plane in 2 weeks, go to Nepal and do this. But for me, that trek really represented just, it was like a homecoming for me. Like I felt like she's back, kind of like I'm healthy again. I am in a financial position where I can do this. I have time. This is for me. And it was just like, it was the best trip of my life. I was just so at peace, so happy. And I mean, being surrounded by the Himalayas is just indescribable, incredible. And so, yeah, I think that was just like, okay, you're not sick anymore, you're healthy, you can do this stuff. And just to be there really represented overcoming that challenge and like climbing the mountain, but like literally climbing the mountain as well. And yeah, I think from there it really just was like, okay, you're on the right track. And then a couple months later, I kind of had that light bulb moment for the business. And yeah, it doesn't feel as scary. I mean, of course, it's still scary and feels like a roller coaster, but not debilitating. Like I feel more excited than nervous, and it just feels right. I don't know. It just feels like what I should be doing, and I'm so excited about it. Like when I was launching it, I first was thinking maybe I'll just do my first launch in the spring. Like maybe I don't need to rush it and try to do fall. And then I was like, like you have everything in place. Like there's no reason to postpone it. And then I started thinking about what about the people that you could help during that time? Like they're going to have to wait that many more months. Like not only the people who are in the developing economies and like working with the business people and whatever communities they serve, but also all of the people who are searching for more meaning in their jobs and want to do inspiring work. It's like, this is something I have been wanting and I know people are wanting to do. And so it just didn't feel right to like not let people have that experience if they want to. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Wow. I really love it. There's so many interesting moments in there, and I just want to highlight a few. Like the mail that you got, or this question that you got, where you realized, hey, I get this question a lot, and this question basically allowing you to write your narrative.
Yeah.
This is where I'm coming from. This is what I'm doing. This is how you can go about, and then explaining to yourself with that, hey, this is actually a way where like all of these pieces that I keep on juggling can fit together in a way that's congruent with me. It's congruent with what I love to do, and it's congruent with what I find purpose in, right?
Yeah.
And so I really love how that came together. And then also like your like detachment process from when you moved away from Madrid and you were like out of that bubble, out of these constraints, and you said like, okay, there was no kind of pleasing anymore that you had to do because there was nobody around. You can just focus on you, right?
Yeah.
But then also like using that later on to say like, hey, but what about all these people that are not getting support? And you kind of bringing the people pleaser back as a way to motivate you and get into action. I really love these two nuggets of your story. Sara, that said, like, I mean, there's a lot of inspiring stuff. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that want to like use their business skills or their consulting skills to actually support other people. If this interview resonated with them, how can they find out more about you and what you're doing?
I think the best way is through LinkedIn. So you can follow me. You can also follow my business, Impactory. On there, we're having a series of masterclasses. And so if you want to learn more about the business and opportunity to go to Nepal, or you're just interested in the different topics, so we're doing topics like social entrepreneurship and really how to use your business skills to help people. Specifically in developing economies, we're talking about design thinking for extreme affordability, different funding methods for low-income markets. So if any of those things are interesting to you, definitely follow, join the masterclass. Our next one is on this Wednesday. But yeah, we'll be posting everything on there. And then, of course, you can check out the website. We have more information on there too, impactory.com. So I hope to see some of you over there, and feel free to send me a message if you want to know more as well.
Sara, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your story. I wish you all the best with making your project success. I can already see a lot of people resonating with this. So thank you so much for sharing your story, and yeah, see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.